introduce myself. So yeah, so I'm like a physicist and computer scientist by training. For like 2 weeks now I have moved from University of Warsaw to the Nencki Institute of Experimental Physics, Biology of the Polish University, Polish Academy of Science. We can hear that I'm like adjusted my old affiliation still. Yeah, and I am generally interested in analyzing how different mathematical and computational methods can be used to discover like novel knowledge in what we see in behavioral and other biological experiments. Today I'll tell you about hierarchies with rats, and like there will be a bit of US ultrasound, but not much, but hopefully enough to justify my presence here. So, all right, can I get the screen back? Thanks. Let me share. All right, let's get some strange problem here. So,
you need any support, Miron?
No, I should be ready in a second.
Yeah, it looks good.
All right, so the presentation is on. So like the button stopped responding. So. But I'm not liked by this software, as you may notice. All right, so back to the topic, USVs and rat hierarchies. So let's start like with defining what hierarchy is. So the literal translation is the rule of high priest. So it's not about the literal translation. It's about like the typical in the interpretation of this word. So that the hierarchy is an arrangement that is woven from some superiority relations. So we usually see that we have several agents in our system, like here those red blobs, and they have like a relation between them that some object is superior to some other subordinate one, and this relation like orders them in a structure that's in the easiest case can be just a linear one from like the top to the bottom, or we can have some branches as in this example. Yeah, so why do we study hierarchies? It's because like animals, especially social ones, like tend to have them. And why do they have them? So we can give some examples of some hypotheses. So one idea is that when animals like try to compete about a resource or something similar, then like they would be involved in some conflict. They may fight, and fighting takes energy. If there is a hierarchy, they can like relay this information and just skip the fight to save energy. So, and also like hierarchies synchronizes the group and they strengthens coherence. So like they are the glue that actually makes the group of animals. Like it's what prevents it from like ripping apart and just desynchronizing completely. It's also like a tiebreaker for some cognitive processes. Like if we have a group that just it's you can imagine it in a labyrinth and there is a decision where to go, right? So some animals may want to go one way, some animals want to go the other way. So if there would be like no leader to lead them actually in one direction, they would split. So again, this is the same thing as a coherence. Like so, But on the other hand, we can like strengthen coherence, but like then we'll have a decision block, right? So the animals will not be able to make any decisions, so they will just stay in place or split. So here, like this hierarchical tiebreaker can like move the cognitive process forwards. And it also like enables specialization. So several animals can like drop some of their capacities, like to serve some purpose in a group and like specialize there. So without hierarchy, like this would be not an optimal strategy. That would be like the generalist approach would be much more evolutionarily preferred. So that's why we should. That's why like living in a hierarchy allows one to specialize. And from like the easy perf practical approach, like it's just a behavioral signal, and so something that we can observe, correlate with something else. And on the other hand, it can be a confounder in various experiments. So maybe something that can actually break our results. So something that actually has to be investigated as well. And yeah, so we generally know that hierarchies on its own are like latent. So latent means like hidden. So you cannot like generally see the hierarchy. Like in some monkeys, we can see like that there's a leader that has some physical characteristics that can be like seen. Okay, this ape leads here there because it's big and it has like red stripes in proper places or something. But usually, like it's something that lies underneath, and we have to observe it indirectly by some other means. And the usual approach is to look at something called dominance events. So here's like an abstract dominance event that we have a pair of agents that exist in the system, and one like dominates the other. And so this thing like builds the structure by giving us the relation. So we can say that the probability that the relation exists, that A is superior to B, like is somewhat correlated with the number of wins in those dominance events, right? So we expect that animal that is winning is also more likely to be higher in the hierarchy. And the like easiest and the most naive version of the model of this system is something that I call latent aura, like, or let's say latent strength. So the idea is that we can give each agent or each animal a weight that tells us what is the strength of this animal. And the typical model for how this translates into the probability of wins and actually the relation and that builds the hierarchy is something called the Bradley-Terry model, which is also widely known as Plackett-Lucy. But like Plackett-Lucy is a generalization of Bradley-Terry, which works for more interactions, like bigger interactions at only two-way. And the idea here is that if we have the strengths of the animals, the probability is given by such a formula that the strength of the animal that is supposed to win divided by the normalized by their common strength. So it is actually, there is a method proposed some years ago, almost 100 years ago, to estimate those strengths of animals. So it was proposed by Ernst Zermelo. So the funny thing here is that like he also proposed some other axiom that is that have split mathematics in half. Like, so it's the axiom of choice, but like let's not talk about it here. And like we can just measure the probabilities of wins and get those trends. But the problem with all models is that they may work or they may not work. So, and especially there's a problem with this model that it's based on something that was later called the Lucy axiom from the same Lucy that is in Placket Lucy. And it's also in the social choice theory, it's called the EEA axiom, so independence of relevant alternatives. And it says that when we make decision, we don't look at the context, right? So the fact that animal A wins over animal B doesn't depend on the status of the group or the states of any other animal in the group, which sounds very suspicious when we get everything that like psychology and behavioral science have learned over the years. In fact, we can like compare the probabilities generated by this model to what happens in the actual model. So this is there is like a bunch of data that from the EcoHub system that's about the chasings of mice, which is like used as the dominance event here. And we can estimate using the method I mentioned earlier the strength of the animals, and what we can see here is like the array of probabilities that is actually like inferred by this model. So what you can see is that this characteristic Tartan structure, because this is how like those matrices look like if you look at this, so that like the strong animal has to win with all other animals like similarly strongly, like the loser should also like lose, let's say, more or less equally with others. So this structure is like actually like is very alien to actual data. So here we can compare like the true probability from many events that we have measured, and here's the prediction using the strands fitted to this data. And what you can see is that in the ideal case we should get a diagonal here, but actually what we're getting is it's like a cloud. It's obviously like statistically significantly correlated, but it still does a lot of errors. Like what you have seen here is mirrors what I have like said before. That like events that are very rare in actuality get some higher BT predictions. So this is like the actual like network of interactions is much sparser than what's predicted. And on the other hand, like also Bradley Terry like predicts the strong animals to be actually very proficient in winning the fights, but they actually are like much less capable. And so those are like those changes that like call for some other approaches. And obviously the alternative approach is like to go the non-parametric way and like teach any models of the strength of the animal and just look at the network that is created by this. So here we can make a different estimate, so that's just average number of wins. Like and here we look at the whole group, obviously, so the normalization is different. And there are like 4 things. Okay, I wrote 3, but it's 4 about this relation to hold. So it would order animals perfectly. So again, the first thing is that like an animal has to not lose with itself, which is trivial. Like we don't. That's why we haven't counted that. The second thing is that while we have like 3 animals, A, B, and C, and A wins with B and B wins with C, we should expect that A will also win with C. So this is called transitive transitivity criterion, which is like very crucial, but we'll move to it later. And the third thing is that like the relation should be antisymmetric. So if A wins with B, we expect that B loses with A. This is also like easy to move with. And the fourth criterion is that we should get a relation like that A wins with every A should win with every other agent or lose. And so we should have like the dense graph of all relations. So it's something called strong connectivity, and it's usually not something that we can get from real data, especially if you get to like cut it somehow. So as I wrote here, like we can just compare that probabilities of wins versus loses in a pair and construct this relation this way. This will fulfill like 1 and 3. Like the 4 is not like trivially fulfilled, but the lack of it only makes us that like that the hierarchy that we have found is either like not straight, so it can get branches, or it may like be slightly undetermined. And this is something that we can probably live with. So I won't like cry over this, but you'll see the consequences of ignoring the fourth criterion. And about transitivity, like a bit going back. So again, here we have like two ways to break this property. One is that we can have some observational errors or some sampling biases that actually make this arrows go in the wrong direction. So this is something that we can deal with. And the serious problem is that we can have hierarchies that are not actually hierarchies. So the canonical example is the rock, paper, scissors game. Right? So we know that rock is beaten by paper, and that paper is beaten by scissors. So the transitivity will tell us that scissors are the most potent weapon, and they should actually also destroy rock. But we know that the rules of the game won't say otherwise. So this is like the graph of dominance that actually does not create any hierarchy. So like with Placket, we cannot like model this even with this graph approaches. We can actually like see if this happens. Although this is like hard to achieve in the presence of noise. So actually this kind of relations will just see like an undefined hierarchy, or like a hierarchy that is not stable at all. Yeah, and the solution that I wanted to propose to actually get the hierarchy out of this data is to actually enforce the transitivity. And there is something called Tiedemann's rank paired method, which is again thought of as an election scheme for like preferential elections. So the idea is that if we draw the graph, we can start from like the biggest, fattest arrows first. So the pairs of the animals that this dominance is clearest, and we can start like locking them in, like starting from the biggest arrow, then the second arrow, and so forth. And while we can encounter like the arrows that go the other way, we can just ignore them. So here you can see that we have a bunch of fat arrows and some thin arrows that will come later, and you can see that we have ignored them because they go against the already established flow, right? So here it is direct, and also it works for the indirect relation between those two objects. Right, so this is a very nice method. It works well, it's fast, and we can like look what hierarchies it infers, and I will show you some examples in a second. So, but like first we'll also discuss like how can we know that we are actually inferring something that's meaningful. So like the typical criterion like machine learning and let's say non-standard statistics is that we look at stability, not about the predictions, because predictions here are perfect. We're using the estimated probabilities, so no problem with that. And though the problem is that we can expect that hierarchies may shift or evolve with time. So now there's a question like whether we're like estimating something that doesn't work. So our scheme is not working. We're looking into the void. Or the other version is just that the hierarchy exists, but it evolves. So that's not like a very strict criterion. You have to like, go with the flow here. And also, if you look at dynamics, there's also this uncertainty principle equivalent that you can get like a small window with several events. So this will give us very good time resolution. So we'll know that at this precise time point, the curve is this way. But we'll have less events, the dominance events to estimate, so the curve quality will be lower. Okay, so that is gonna be for later. And like ranks can be also replaced with so how to solve the problem of branching hierarchy. Like so, the nice idea is just to like count the number of subordinates for the animals. So we can go for this example here. So we can see that this block has 4 subordinates. This one has 1. This one has 2. Those 2 have non-subordinates. So actually, we'll get the order of that. This is the dominant. This is the second one. This is the third, and those are the last exequor, right? In this view, so this is like a reasonable approximation of this graph. And there was a question, why not ELO? So ELO system is exactly the same as Plackett-Lucy, so it's the same thing. So that's, and I just, my argument is that it does not properly estimate the probabilities of domination. Right, so this is the example from LRT. So LRT is LMT for rats. And here, like this is like some preliminary study. So we're using just approaches. So I will like tell you why I prefer to use like more frequent events than some events that are more like obviously connected with dominance, but this in a second. And what we have here is that the like 55-hour recording has been split into 10 like epochs, which is like about 5 hours each. And here's the number of events. The rats go into the cage here. They are like females, and they are like control for the LSD experiments, so they don't get any substances, just like vanilla rats. And what we can see here is that there is a subordinate count for each rat in each of these epochs based on the window of these 5 hours. So each color is one agent, so one rat. And we'll discuss this more in a second. And this is like a similar thing, but the inference is done on the whole cumulative time. So if it's here, this is the hierarchy starting from the beginning to this point, and this is the final hierarchy that we can get for by aggregating all the events here. And this is to like say that we're on the ultrasonic conference, so I have also included the number of audio events. So it's audio events because they are not perfectly filtered, but like hopefully most of them will be ultrasonic vocalizations. And what we can see here is that obviously the rats come in and they have like a lot of events at the beginning, then there's some slowdown in that, and they start to regain their positions. And what we can see is that like the hierarchy is established here, and but we have some dynamics, like especially this cumulative window, we can see that they generally converge to something at the end, and the red agent is going on the top. The teal one is on the bottom generally, and there is like the violet one starts very good, but then it's consecutively go down the hierarchy. And like in this window approach, we can see that it's actually more pronounced that like there are, let's say, events when the animals try to break the hierarchy, and this is actually what seems to be correlated with vocalization. So like that they vocalize when they are challenging their hierarchies, and especially when one animal is like dropping in the hierarchy, as a steel one here and the violet one here. Like so usually after some vocalization effects, they are going down. So maybe that's an approach. And here is like when we increase the time resolution, so we now have 25 epochs, and the audio activity plot is the same, but those are got more pronounced. So you can see that this switch is actually more stable than we thought, but it's in the middle of a very unstable, turbulent moment. And what we can see here also like is what we are all telling you, that like the vocalization rich moments are making correlated with some drop in hierarchy. And also this time point is interesting because this is where like all the dominance events ceased at the moment, so you can see that the hierarchy has disappeared in the window system, but it has like reappeared in more or less the same form later on. So it's also interesting. Like, and then like it starts reappearing, and then we have this turbulent time that actually created the final hierarchy. It's also interesting that the hierarchy just before this say cooldown period is actually identical to the final one. So that's an interesting thing. But like I also have an example with mice. So this is like actually the comparison of several sources of dominance events. So we have like SIT, so these are pairwise mice put in the LMT system. There is like an LMT of 4 animals, then it was like the LMT later and the tube test, which is like the standard test here. This is also like IntelliCage test when we were looking at like the chasings in the corners, and then the animals from those groups were connected. So this explains the blanks here. So you can see that there are some groups of those LMT animals that actually hold the hierarchy very well. Over the experiments, it's interesting that the hierarchy can change when they are mixed with other mice, and then it can go back to more or less how it started. Like especially it seems that like dropping in hierarchy is like some kind of a traumatic event that makes them drop later also within conspecifics. So don't actually have time to like discuss this in detail, but maybe you can write a Game of Thrones out of it, probably something like that, because like there's a lot of interesting insight. And just to conclude, over the time probably, yeah. So like I think like that this LO approach is wrong, just because like it's alien to me to think that like there is something that inherently places an animal in some position in the hierarchy. Like it's something that actually needs maintenance, and actually we see that animals also don't seem to have like a hierarchy in their minds. Like they always sample different different conflicts to see like how they are located in the entire group. It's not that they only like challenge the neighboring agents in the system. So maybe in birds it's different. Like it seems that birds have hierarchies that are like much more inside their brains that are actually reinforced all the time, but that's a question for the another talk. And like from what I have learned from this data, it seems that I started to believe that actually in rodents, like the aggressive part is like the, let's say, changing in hierarchy, and not actually the maintaining it. Like the maintaining actually looks more like a micromanagement approach, like that the boss is going out and it changes it checks that all the subordinates are in their place, or it's like spying on them. So it's less like, say, let's say, a passive aggressive than actually aggressive behavior. But that's like my intuition. And as usual, like I think like it's best to like judge the method by its robust characteristics. And like if you want to try this approach, like there's an R package Toporanga. There's also like a Rust Grate with this Tidyman's algorithm. So if you prefer that, it's probably easy to use in Python. There's a Rust package, so Crate, which is called Viber, which you can also use. It's all open source as usual with me. And that's my talk. So time for questions then, and we can go to the break. Maybe if there are none. Oh, yeah.
All right. Oh, yes, please.
I have a question. Great talk. Was wonderful. So what are the inherent challenges of being able to track individual subjects over time? This is the great, we've been trying to do that as a field for 20 years. What was kind of the main breakthrough that allowed us to be able to do that?
Well, like in this case, it's just like bigger hard drives, right? Because like it's not that actually we are doing anything more. Like it's but the interesting part is that like in this, let's say, Paris experiment, because it was done by Adam and Natalia in Paris. So this thing is just like the surprising part is that it actually worked. Like the naive idea would be that like changing the place in which mice are will just break everything down. So it's just like a good thing for the mice were kind enough to like behave in a way that's it's actually interesting here. So yeah, that was like more like a leap of faith than like any technical breakdowns. Okay, so there's a question: which features did you use to identify the individual animals in your group? All right, so this was done using the LMT and using like the methods that involve only two animals, so it's easy, right? So generally in LMT and in EcoHabits, those are like RFIDs that are implanted in the animals, and when animals like move past antennas, they are being identified, and this is what we're using. And the dominance event was like either like winning the game in the tube test, and here those were like approaches, so when two animals are close together. This is like chasing plus some noise, and I thought like that this noise would cancel each other out, right? So if we have like approaches that are not a competition, then we'll see that animal A like approaches animal B equally frequent way, right? So it cancels out, and what we get is actually this dominance approach, so it's like polarized. So that was my approach to how to encode that. But obviously we can like try this with some more precisely defined events, but the problem is that there are like much less of them, so the resolution of all this drops. So that's my answer. And from Victoria, would you assume that there are specific events with the group that trigger reprogramming of the existing hierarchy? So maybe they are, like that would be nice to see. So we'll look into that, and we'll see about that. Like for now, we have like the signal to look for those things.